Hey everyone, it's Nathan Orenstein with The No Show, here to talk about Martin Scorsese's The Irishman. The Irishman stars Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, and Al Pacino, and is written by Steven Zaillian. It's based on the book I Heard You Paint Houses by Charles Brandt. For a while, The Irishman honestly kind of sounded like a myth to me. Martin Scorsese teaming up with Scorsese vets Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro for another mob movie, this time bringing in newcomer Al Pacino. That sounds like something straight out of a fairy tale. But then I heard it was going to be 3.5 hours long, and I started to get a bit concerned. And then I heard it was going to be exclusive to Netflix, and I started to worry even more. Luckily, there was nothing to worry about because Scorsese's The Irishman is one of the best films of 2019, hands down. From the very first shot, it was obvious that this was a Scorsese film, and that is certainly not a bad thing. Every shot is meticulously crafted, and every camera movement feels like it was perfected to a T. And no, I'm not exaggerating when I use the word every here. On a technical level, The Irishman is an absolute marvel. Every aspect of this film is working in harmony with each other to create a movie that's impossibly smooth for 3.5 hours. The music sets the tone for the film and really keeps things moving along. The editing leaves just enough dead time at the end of specific shots in order to let things settle while still keeping a very steady pace. The production design and specifically the color palette feels so timely and simple, yet somehow manages to make every scene pop. The set pieces feel so lived in, adding to a sense of realism that this massive story really strives for. And my god, the anti-aging effects here are setting the bar high for the future of visual effects in cinema. The only real chinks in the armor I could find were that there were a few visual and sound effects that I thought missed the mark a bit, but these are nitpicks in the grand scheme of things. The Irishman runs like a well-oiled machine, and Martin Scorsese continues to impress over 50 years into his prolific career. I haven't even gotten to the clear standout of this film, which definitely has to be the acting. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that Pesci, Pacino, and De Niro all knock it out of the park here. What I wasn't expecting, though, was how different their characters would all be. De Niro plays Frank Sheeran, a truck driver turned mobster who works for the Buffalino crime family, and later Jimmy Hoffa and the Teamsters. He's a very mellow character, but there's this sense of violence that's always bubbling underneath. Ultimately, though, he's defined by his loyalty, making him a well-respected and well-loved individual of the community. Pesci plays Russell Buffalino, the head of the Buffalino crime family. He's fun to be around and he's outgoing, but he's incredibly powerful and instills fear in whoever has to work with him. Finally, Pacino plays labor union leader and Teamster president Jimmy Hoffa. Hoffa is charismatic and a beloved leader, but he's very hot-headed and is constantly getting into trouble with other people. These three characters all come from essentially the same circle, but they couldn't be much more different as individuals. Pesci, De Niro, and Pacino all give very different performances, but they do such incredible work with Scorsese's direction and Zaillian's writing. In my opinion, Pacino does the best, but it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if all three of them rack up awards for their efforts. These three actors aren't the only ones who deserve praise, though. The Irishman is a massive story, and with that comes a massive cast. And honestly, the most impressive aspect of this film might be how great every single performance is, no matter how small and insignificant it may seem. Of course, this is just a further testament to Scorsese's direction and Zaillian's writing, but the acting here is generally pretty great, and this adds a real sense of realism to this film, which keeps an insane true story that much more human. Now that we've talked about all the fun stuff, we do need to address the elephant in the room, and I am of course referring to the daunting 3.5 hour runtime. I'm pretty sure the longest film I've ever watched is about 3 hours long, so this beats that by a pretty good margin. And yes, you do feel the length of the movie as you're watching it, but none of it felt that unwarranted, and I was never bored. The story follows several decades of Frank Sheeran's life, and the pacing never felt too fast or too slow despite this. And despite the typical gangster movie stereotypes you might expect from a film like this, it's actually a pretty grounded movie. Yes, there is violence here and there, but it never feels overdramatic. In fact, it actually feels a bit downplayed to reflect the commonality of it all for a mobster. What I'm trying to say is that this isn't your typical mainstream gangster movie, and despite all that, it manages to be exciting and entertaining for nearly 3.5 hours. Unfortunately, the runtime does lead to my only major problem I have with The Irishman. While every scene feels entertaining, I can't say that every scene feels essential. In a film this long and this large in scope, I can't help but get the impression that some of these scenes could have been removed without really affecting the narrative at all. By the end of the film, some parts of the story and some parts of the character development kind of got lost in the mix too, and they probably could have been cut altogether or given a bit more time in order to be more fully fleshed out. Of course, adding more time to a 3.5 hour movie was probably ill-advised, so cutting them might have been the right call here. Besides this problem though, The Irishman is honestly pretty flawless. This crime epic feels like a magnum opus in Martin Scorsese's filmography, which is really saying something. This will likely be nominated for an insane number of Oscars, and I honestly can't complain about that at all. The Irishman is an amazing feat not only for Martin Scorsese, but for the film industry as a whole, and I'm going to be giving it a 9 out of 10. If you like the review, then go ahead and like and subscribe, and click that bell to get notifications for whenever I post. And if you've seen The Irishman already, I'd love to hear your thoughts about it down in the comments below. Stay tuned for my review of Queen and Slim coming in a couple days. I've been Nathan Orenstein with The No Show. Thanks for watching.